All right, we are back at it again. And with that being said, we are going to do yet another video review or a reaction video, except this is going to be a reaction to an entire channel. So during this recording, I may or may not pause this recording to then watch watch this channel, because I want to do a review on the entire channel as a whole, but I do want to start off with the most recent video, it seems like, which is the rise and fall of the blue pill. There's a lot of good stuff in that video, but I'm not necessarily here to argue about politics. I'm more here to talk about psychology and parapsychology, and then by extension metaphysics, because this is a channel about metaphysics, religion, and the occult. So, in a way, politics is going to play into it, especially in regards to the politics of the left. And that includes the quote-unquote left, what is just commonly known as neoliberals, and then you have the left, like the hard left. So, it's very strange because now, the thing about the left is their tactic is they do everything on the basis of plausible deniability. That's essentially how they act. And by extension, the right will then say things to them that are plausibly deniable. They'll kind of react with their plausible deniability of they're just stupid, or they're incompetent, they can't even figure out basic biology, they don't even know basic math, so on and so forth. To which the liberals, the neoliberals, will then react with their fits of rage and their little what do you call their fits of rage, their anger moments, and their little, you know, crying for attention on social media. To which there's there's really not much actually going on. And so this is kind of why the actual left doesn't really get much done, and why they just kind of remain in the shadows. So I want to compare the neoliberals to the hard left. The hard left, I mean as in like socialist, communist, Marxist, people that actually read the Communist Manifesto and wholeheartedly believe in it. Like they actually want to pick up rifles or pick up whatever weapon they can use to essentially pretty much have a coup d'etat. And that's not just in the United States, that's like literally across the world, mind you. So then there is, what you have called the neoliberals. They like to whine and complain, and they like to throw a fit and whatnot on social media and like to get attention. But here's the thing. They do what they do, and they do it very well. Now, I could say that they plausibly know what they're doing, but I have to say it's plausible because that's also what they do really well. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, they do it very, very well. They do it extremely well. Because if you were to call them out on their plausibly deniable intentions, you could just say that, well, that now you're delusional, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're possibly schizophrenic. And now with these new laws in effect that essentially does grant medical practitioners and sometimes even just judges and police officers, though the police officers are more just of, an extension, kind of just following the rules, doing whatever they have to do. So at this point, you're essentially having a situation where they can pretty much quite literally chemically lobotomize you for what you do. So it's now gotten to the point where there are people that they quite literally would rather have just any mental health facility than to actually put them in prison. Because if they put you in prison, there's actually a possibility that you may get street cred, or you may make connections. They're like, oh, hey, you're a pretty badass dude. You seem like you're a badass guy, and we actually want to, we're going to help you out. So long story short, that's pretty much how the liberals act. The neoliberals have been keeping up this act for years and years and years. Well, let's just say it the past couple decades. I mean, in the 90s, they had their kick, but it was more of a fringe movement than anything else. I mean, it was, even when I went to high school, and even for much of the early 2010s, it was pretty like looked down upon to be LGBT or queer at all. Yeah, you could quite easily get beaten up or just at least harassed like relentlessly for being such. And if you know, if you did actually somehow manage to just, I'm not sure how to say it, I guess, like, just be prideful about your gayness, your homosexuality, your, I guess, queerness. I mean, you would still get harassed, I guess, just not as much. Some people may stick up for you for just, being who you are and being proud of it. There are definitely those that will respect you. But for the most part, there's always, yeah, I mean, I just remember when I went to junior high, and even for pretty much all of high school and early college, and even in, my Army career, you would have been fucked with relentlessly for being gay, or they would just make fun of you for being gay. Like, if you said anything remotely sexual, they would just like, they'd fucking get on you for it. And I'm not here to, claim that back in my day I was such and such. But I think another point that Whatifalthist makes is essentially the fact that it's dying nowadays. In fact, I'll play a little bit of the video and then get back to it. And so I was just kind of scrolling and scrubbing across the timeline, and funny enough, I ended up coming onto this little thing called Ho Math. Overall, I'm pretty hesitant to put this on my channel just because I'm a pretty small channel, and the term blue pill right there, like anything to do with the pills, can get me kind of, on the not so nice side of the algorithm. But long story short, what you have is, you got home math here. So yeah, it just happens to be a slide where it says home math, but then there's, I guess, yeah, I mean, the whole thing about home math is pretty much plausible deniability. That's ultimately what it boils down to. And he also mentions the part of how the red pill sphere is really just a bunch of bumbling idiots. They're not really that, that much smarter. I mean, they are smarter, but at least plausibly not so. They pretty much, they're going to essentially tell you to take the safe approach to a pretty high stakes situation. So, in other words, they're kind of just telling you to rely on genetics, if you will. So, if you think of, I've oftentimes heard in the church communities, a lot of the church communities, and even the spiritual communities, that they say that life is like a boot camp. And I have to agree and disagree. So, as someone that was in the military, albeit for a short time, and has spent a lot of time with the military community and has worked with the government a lot, I could say that the military is more like, in a way, a boot camp. There's parts of life that are like a boot camp, whereas I would say the world in general, specifically dating, especially modern dating, is more of a selection course than anything else. And I say that as in boot camp is there to break you down and build you back up. As anyone that has been to a basic training or boot camp, a lot of the the training instructors, MTI, DS, DI, whoever it may be for whatever branch, they actually want to see the guys, the people that are struggling, that are just really, can't get it right the first time. And they're struggling and they're trying and they're giving it their all over and over and over again. Those are the motivators. Those are the people that motivated us. And we loved seeing them succeed. However, in the civilian world, it's definitely not like that. Within, you could say, in intergender, interaction, you could say it's like that. But once it's intergender, once you have men and women together, it's no longer like that. It's now a selection course. And you can even go as far to say as this is a selection course where cheating is really, really frowned upon. And that's kind of where you see a lot of these pseudo red pillars going at. And I would even go as far as to say that there are black pillars and then there are pseudo misogynists. I wouldn't even say there's a black pill, to be honest with you. Black pill is just, you could say, it's just a very objective, and you could even say objective way of looking at human interaction and human cultures through the lens of removing the plausible deniability. Let's look at it for what it is. Granted, yes, we don't have all the, instruments and time and everything to measure every single metric and to, being able to conclude every single hypothesis. But based off of what we see, I think anyone with even the slightest amount of common sense could figure these things out. Problem is, a lot of these things are plausibly deniable. And that's how these I guess, what you would call evolutionary psychologists, or people that see reality for what it really is, the actual red pillars. That's kind of, those are the people that actually, seem to be pretty intact. And I wouldn't say they're smarter than the others. I would say that they're simply just more honest than the others. But that's my take on it. And I would even go as far to say that the so-called, black pills community, or whatever you want to call it, this monikers, they're pseudo misogynists. Because if you look at it deep enough, they don't have a problem with women. They don't have a problem with young and beautiful women. They have a problem with other men. They have a problem with angry old men. They have a problem with old men that think that they have to, lay down the laws and defend the rules. They have a problem with men that think that they need to put other men in their place. That's why I call them pseudo-misogynists. Because if you get deep enough, you realize that women are actually kind of on their side, and women are kind of on our side, especially the older women. Yes, they are on our side, and they want to see us do better. But long story short, I'm going to have to take a pause now. I will get back to it later. Thanks, and we'll see each other soon. Evolutionary psychology. But so much of right. So back to our little reaction time, and how to clear my throat a bit. So there was another part where Rudyard from Whatifalthist talked about the blue pill being a boomer ideology, and in many ways it is. In many ways, it's almost like challenging the blue pill is sort of challenging some kind of shadow. You're sort of bringing out this kind of this shadowy figure from the depths that they just don't want to be brought out. And quite frankly, I don't blame them. Everyone is simply a product of their environment, to some extent. Now, obviously, this being a metaphysical channel and a channel about religion and metaphysics and whatnot, I'm obviously going to have to, of course, stay on my stance of this being a metaphysical channel, in that yes, there is correspondence, and yes, there is, of course, the ability to acquire sort of knowledge and experience and tools that you can use to sort of escape your fate, if you will, to sort of break the chain, if you will, to, you could say, be the exception to the rule. But I tend to view life in general as a co-creation. So because of that, we're going to kind of just have to jump out into the mundane reality that all the mundane people live in. And so, with that being said, and in continuation with what Rudyard said about the blue pill being a boomer ideology, it in fact many ways is that the boomers, which are essentially now the ruling class, and much of that ruling class is essentially the greatest generation, which, at this point in time, they're old and they just can't function that well anymore. They're old and they're becoming senile, and they're more just figureheads. It's just, think of Donald Trump. He just spouts stuff to rustle jimmies. He doesn't actually hasn't really done much in terms of, actually causing much damage. I mean, if anything, he's literally one guy. He just spouts stupid shit just because he knows and everyone knows that he's going to cause a reaction. And it's pretty much what he does. So, long story short, with the boomer ideology, you could even take it one step further and argue in many ways that the millennials, and I would even say Gen Z more so than the millennials, despite what social media shows you, is actually living out the boomer fantasy. And I'm not saying the American dream. I don't mean, say, a desire, but the sort of egoistic fantasy, the egoic fantasy that they want to tell themselves and, quite frankly, tell everyone else to kind of make themselves feel like they're stronger and that they're better than us, that we're weak, we're lazy, we're so feminine and everything. And in many ways, yes, unfortunately, Gen Z has become feminine. That's unfortunately just a part of, you could even say it's forced helplessness. And yes, in many ways, I need to stop saying that so much. Yeah, Gen Z is pretty much the result of forced helplessness, especially Gen Z guys. Except it's all just being kept underneath the wraps nowadays. I mean, we're all just communicating on the basis of plausibility. It's what I did for many of my jobs before I got into, serious metaphysics and then eventually actually making videos. You can even say that within the spiritual sphere, the spiritual circles, that much of what we do is plausible deniability. In fact, everything, you could say the sign of silence itself, the sign of Harpocrates and Harpocrat is, in fact, well, it's plausible deniability. You just don't tell the whole truth. You don't lie, but you don't deliver the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's the difference between that. So as far as the boomer fantasy goes, well, that's pretty easy to see. You could see that, millennials and much of Gen Z, I would even say most of Gen Z, did a lot of things that the boomers talked about and they said that they did back in their day, but didn't actually really do. It was all just kind of a game, some kind of clown show of a frat house, if you will, such as with the military. In the military, you can actually see quite a bit how modern guys in the military are actually more muscular, more fit. They carry heavier things than the past generations. So there's that. And yeah, I think that'll be about it for now. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.